one very important notion I'd like to explain, because as you just mentioned, there's nothing worse than aggressive war. I consider sanctions to be a part of war, and I don't think I'm alone in that thinking, because the way it's marketed, of course, in the media and by Western governments, particularly the US, is that, oh, they're harmless. Look, we're just targeting 3 individuals. No, that's not how sanctions work. As I explained before, you end up having companies and banks, so both in terms of commerce and trade, as well as the financial sectors, who just, they run like they drop you like a hot potato, man. They run in the other direction. They want nothing to do with you anymore because they're now afraid of the US. They're afraid of being fined, of being put on a list of aiding terrorists, because they sold a bunch of, grapefruits to Yemen. Like, do you see the issue here? And then you have people that just don't want to navigate around the sanctions. It's too complicated. It's like, yeah, okay, maybe I want to keep selling and doing business, but it's just, I don't want to deal with this. And this is the problem, right? So it's siege warfare. This is my point. It's not to be taken lightly. You have medical shortages. You have repair parts for everything from planes to hospital equipment. From public infrastructure, you can't access it because you're cut off from dollars, and half of financial transactions that take place in the world roughly are done with dollars. So you just can't participate, right? And you're also cut off from companies that make these parts or that sell these parts. It's a disaster. And so this is why it's so easy for them in the media to just, it's just sanctions, we're just labeling them as terrorists. They don't tell you the real cost of that it's the civilian population that suffers, right? They don't tell you that part. That, like in Syria, for example, right now you have bread lines, and I have never seen a bread line in my life in Syria, no less. Syria, again, I remind you where Syria is located. It's in the Fertile Crescent. Yeah. So that's where farming was practically invented. The soil is more than rich, and Syria has been self-sufficient for decades now, since the 90s. It's got its own cotton, its own wheat, lentils, you name it, right? In a surplus. They're exporting it to Italy. They're exporting wheat to Italy. That's how much wheat they have. So if you're bringing a country that is self-sufficient to its knees, I think that should signal to you how severe and costly sanctions are, and how they devastate the civilian population. That in a country which had a surplus of wheat, people are now forming bread lines because the currency is plummeted. You have shortages in every domain. It's a disaster, right? And Yemen is even worse off. So it's really a crime, and I think it's very accurate and not so unreasonable at all to compare sanctions to siege warfare, because you are effectively isolating a country. Perhaps not, it's not like in the Middle Ages where you come and you put your army around the walls of Damascus, like Bab Tuma, Bab Shari, and, you just stay there for a couple of years and cut off the food. I mean, not physically, although you do have U.S. troops there, and they are actually this is the irony in one regard. They are literally occupying the breadbasket region of Syria, which is Dore, which is Hasake, where you have the petrol and where all of the farmland is. So they are doing that in one regard, but it's also financially. You have a lot of money, for example, from Syrian businesses that is locked up in Lebanese banks. A lot of dollars are there, billions, and they can't access them, right? Because of Lebanon also experiencing their own economic issues, and so you can't access them. But on top of it, the Caesar Act sanctions just make it infinitely more difficult. And it's really a modern version of siege warfare, economic terrorism as well. That's another good term for it.